Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah Martin with The Contoured Chemist. It's the first question I get after people have started loving and using Seint is, I want to start with eyeshadows. And so ever since I started doing my custom color matches for eyeshadows, I feel like I've gotten a much clearer understanding of what people are looking for. So today we're gonna do step-by-step how I recommend picking out eyeshadow shades. So if you want to check it out, please keep watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for being here. Okay friends, I'm excited. Y'all know how much I love talking about eyeshadows. So hopefully I won't talk all day. Let's talk step by step. So I am doing my custom color matches for eyeshadows. If you have not seen that, you can request one. It is a separate link than my normal color match, okay? So it is specifically, you're gonna get an all eyeshadow match. Now, the problem with that, you guys know me, I give a lot of information. I give a lot of swatches. I'm still sharing you guys like a lot of things so that you can kind of keep it as a guide for when you want to shop again for eyeshadows and you want to add to your palette and kind of know different combinations. But for first timers, if you don't have any eyeshadows from Seint, you might be overwhelmed. I get that. So hopefully this video will kind of be like, help both sides of that spectrum. Like if you already have some shades or if you're starting from scratch, all right? And then we're gonna do a fall eye look because it's fall. And I have to. First thing, I'm gonna do it literally step by step. Step one, you are going to assess what you have or don't have if you're starting from scratch. So first I want you to look at what shades you already have. Doesn't even have to be all from Seint, just whatever eyeshadows you have and you love and you're using on a normal basis. And especially if you can look at them as if they're from other companies and be like, how would Sarah classify this? Is it a matte? Is it a mid-tone? Do I use it in my crease? That would be a 4, okay? And so if you're not used to my category system, I have it at the very beginning of every eyeshadow match. I can link a video on my category system as well. I'll put in the graphic if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's a way that I've assigned all of Seint eyeshadows numbers so that you can compare them, so you easily can know where they go on the eye, so you know more about the shades that look nothing like they do on the website. Okay, so I kind of have these categories, and if you can kind of assess what you have and be like, okay, well, I mostly am wearing a 2 and a 4 every day. I'm throwing a shimmer, a lighter shimmer on the lid, and a mid-tone matte in my crease. If you know that's what you use on the daily, but you look at your shades and you're like, well, I mostly have like 1s and 5s, or I only have one matte, but I need more. Like I have like all these shimmers that can go on my lids, but nothing to pair them with. Assess what you have so you can easily know what gaps to fill. And so I feel like that's number one. I feel like most people are drawn to those fun shimmers, which I feel like I'm gonna hit last because the other ones are easier to create those staples with. The other ones are easier to just pick a few and have those, and then everyone likes to have fun with the shimmers, or even if you don't like shimmers, those, you know, fun pops of color, okay? So know what you're gonna use, and some of these shades you might not use at all, and that's okay. But know what you're looking for, okay? That's step number one. And if you're starting from nothing, you make it so much easier. You just follow the rest of the steps, okay? So what categories are you missing? What colors are you using the most? What colors do you like to have the most versatility? For me, that's 2s and 4s. It's very, 2s and 3s are kind of together, and 4s. So those lid shades, those crease colors, I could do 2-shade combos for the rest of my life and be happy. I don't need as many of the other shades that I consider a full eye look. you can easily do looks with just 2 shades. We all know that, right? We're gonna start with the easiest one first. Can you guys guess? Okay, now step number 2. We're gonna find a universal highlight shade. So I call a number 1 shade a highlight shade. Let's get out the colors so you understand what I'm talking about, okay? They fall into this light, in fact, not even all of them on the top row. They fall into light category, and I'm going to attempt to make you guys like a flow chart. We'll see if it gets done before this video drops, in order to kind of pick these shades a little bit easier with some examples so you understand. Okay, so for me, I would say universal highlight. You guys know probably what mine is by now because I say it in every single video. It's Drift and Sabrina. These two I find extremely interchangeable. They flatter my skin tone. They are lighter than my skin tone, and they catch light in order to highlight the eye. So I typically wear this inner corner under brow every single day. It takes me 2 seconds to apply it. My eyes pop. As soon as I do it, I feel naked without it at this point. This would be, I'd say, one of those shades. It's easiest because you need one. I play with other ones, but like, typically I always wear these. You guys know that. Always. I wear one of these 2. You only need one, okay? Whatever flatters your skin tone, whether that is warm or cool. Here are my picks. So if you have similar skin tone to me, you tend to be more warm undertoned, I'd say one of these 2 is gonna be your best bet. If you are cool, I would say Unicorn. Do you see how that one is more white undertoned, okay? Now, these are all very shimmery. If you have mature eyes, or say you're brand new to a highlight and you're like, I don't know if I wanna put a bunch of shimmer on my eyes, Sarah, I would say start with Rome. Rome is a very similar tone to these, so it's kind of universally flattering. It's kind of a champagne, very neutral, but has just a touch of shimmer. Do you see that? It is the most subtle of what I consider the highlight shades, okay? Actually, maybe it's not the most subtle. The most subtle would be if you tell me, Sarah, I don't want any shimmer, no shimmer, none. That's when you use Cupcake. Cupcake is like our Vanilla Dust, just has more pigment. It is the same tone. It's just a neutral, okay? But still adding that in the inner corner is going to add light. So let's just use these colors as we talk about them. All right, so I'm just gonna grab Drift and I'm gonna just pop it right there in the inner corner. Now, I feel very strongly from somebody that has very mature eyes that you can use shimmers, but it's all placement. Now, some shimmers are harder to wear than others depending on where you're trying to place them, but most people are very flat right there. If you have mature eyes like me, literally it goes into danger zone as soon as you leave the tear duct, okay? And when you see people that use their fingers and dip in and go straight there, they don't have mature eyes yet because that will get under here, texture city, right? So keep it right on that tear duct. And then we're gonna go under the brow here. We're gonna kind of blend that out so we don't have a harsh line, but we're literally trying to hug the highest point of our arch in order to lift. This is to open up the eye, brighten, and this is to lift. Okay, and no matter your age, you can benefit from this technique, okay? It's easy, like I said, takes 2 seconds. Okay, so the very easiest one would be a universal highlight shade. Now, some of these other shades definitely brighten, highlight, and catch light, but like I said, if you get a universal color that works with anything, guys, these are neutral, okay? Pick a neutral, whether you're drawn to cool or warm tones, you want subtle, you want no shimmer. These are my choices. Easiest thing, pick one. That's it, you got your first shade. okay? That's step number 2. Step number 3 gets a little bit more complicated just because there's a lot more options, but we're gonna go with that number 4. Sometimes it's what I call a 4-5. Now, I'll be honest, most of mine are in my personal palette, I think. That's not eyeshadows. 4 to 4-5 shades are what I like to call the mid-tone matte. They are always matte because they always go in your crease where everyone's eyes are more textured. And if you have more mature eyes like me, you wanna make sure you use no shimmers near it whatsoever. Okay, so I feel like if you're starting out, you need to make this a neutral. Now, if you guys have seen my graphic, there's a wide range of neutrals. Neutrals are anything that is a mixture of colors which makes up a brown, right? You can go, grays can be neutrals, you can get browns, you can creams. Technically, every neutral leans one way or the other. It's very rare to have something completely right in the middle, like it has no warmth or no cool undertone. They always have an undertone, guys. If it's a green or purple undertoned brown, it's cool toned. If it is an orange or red undertoned brown, it's warm. And so most people have a strong preference. If you don't have a strong preference, sometimes it takes you trying one to see what it looks like on your eye. So some people really want their eye color to pop, right? So we've learned in color theory, if you want your eye color to pop, you go opposite the color wheel. That color makes your eye color stand out. But what happens if that doesn't complement your skin tone? Okay, so there's a lot of different factors. Like I have hazel eyes, right? They say purples for hazel eyes. That's what will make it pop. But I'm very warm. When I wear too cool of purples on my eyes, it actually washes me out. Like there's a happy medium where you can find a warmer purple, right? So like it's all a matter of undertone, how cool to how warm something is. It's a preference. Do you like it on yourself? If it makes your eye color pop, but it makes your skin look washed out, it's probably not your best option, okay? So like there's a lot of varying degrees depending on what your preferences and like what matters to you most. And there's a lot of factors, okay? And so if you don't know, maybe you're starting out with eyeshadows for the very first time, go as neutral as possible. The more neutral your number 1 and your number 4 shade is, you're gonna have 2 neutrals in your overall eye look that will give you way more versatility for picking your other shades. You're gonna have way more fun with picking a fun shimmer for the lid or a pop of color for liner or outer corner. You're gonna be able to choose more than just neutrals for those. So I always start with a neutral in my crease. My 4 shades are always neutral. I occasionally will bring in, you know, a little bit more color, but you got to think of it logically as well, okay? Our number 4 shade is going in our crease. That is naturally where we have the most shadow, okay? So if you're applying a bright color right here, do you think it's going to help the shape of your eyes and create more depth and shadow there? No, it's not gonna look as natural. So like, are you looking for a really bold eye look or are you looking for a natural everyday look? It's very easy to pop a neutral in your crease to emphasize your eye shape. It's going to give more contour to your eye. It's like a natural eye contour, okay? Let's say if you're starting out, what's the easiest thing? If you're starting, we're gonna go as neutral as possible. Those staple shades that will go with absolutely anything. Mine are for warm, Bubba, and Sedona. Okay, those are warm undertones. You can see Bubba is a 4 and Sedona is a 4-5. If that shows you anything, like 4-5 just means you can wear it lightly as a 4 or wear it darker for a 5, okay? So that is for warm. Now, if you like more cool options, basic, and oak. Same thing, one lighter, one darker. Can you see the difference? More orange undertone, more gray undertone. These are cool, these are warm. Those 4 are such staples. I rarely don't have all 4 in my compact. When I'm traveling, if you're looking to have a travel compact, you don't necessarily need all 4, but if you have one warm and one cool, you can always adjust if your eye looks off in any way. Like having those warm, cool staples is key in my opinion. Those are staples. Okay, so now let's say you're like, okay, Sarah, I kind of got the staple thing going on. Where can I go from here? Okay, so we can go, do you prefer warm? Do you prefer cool? Let's go into subtle warm colors because we already went into Bubba and Sedona. I consider a subtle warm. I think Butterscotch and Philly are 2 more that are subtle and warm. Now, Butterscotch, you can tell, is a lot warmer. Philly is a lot darker. So here we got the 2 subtle, let's put them right here. I can fit them. Okay, where we got 4 or 5 shades, so they can be a lot darker. You see that? Now let's go for, we got the gray undertoned cools. Let's say you want more of a green undertone, which is an option. That's when we go into Bird and Labyrinth. Okay, again, you're not gonna see probably a huge difference. Bird I find very universal, almost neutral. You can tell it's not as gray, but you can probably tell it's got that olive green undertone. So those are more on the green subtle options. Then you can go into the purple undertones, which are cool, but a little bit more subtle. We have, I'm gonna pick one subtle, one not so subtle. So we have Cafe and then Lullaby. I don't really consider, I mean, some people might say this is a neutral. I consider it a little bit more purple than straight neutral, but like, swatching it here, it doesn't look too crazy off, but Cafe is more of a purple undertone gray, and I think you'll be able to see that when I swatch it. Okay, now you can tell now how much more purple Lullaby looks, right? And then there's Cafe, which is way more purple than these, which were the more subtle cool tones. So once you have those staple shades, I feel like you can easily be like, okay, these are my favorite staples. I really like those cool ones. Now let's pick some with a little bit more color for variation, because I feel like 4 shades are ones that everyone uses way more. They might not be as fun as some of those shimmers, but man, if you want to switch up an eye look, just switch up your 4 shade. It can make a completely different look, because guess what? That's the color we see most. That's the color that we pull up over our hood and we see when our eyes are open. It can make the biggest impact on the way our eyes look. Okay, we kind of hit those cool ones. Now let's say you want more of a dramatic warm shade. These are my personal fave. You'll see that I wear a lot of these. And in fact, I think I already swatched Butterscotch, but Butterscotch was one of them, which is definitely much warmer, but one of my faves. We got Zion, Holly, Tangerine, and Leo. Do you see that? Zion, Holly, Tangerine, Leo. Those are where we're getting into a little bit more color, a little bit more warmth. I'd say of all these, Zion's probably the least of a pop. I feel like it can pull very like subtly warm, but these other ones are definitely much more of a warm vibe. So I'm gonna go with my old love, my first love, the shade that made me realize I like warm tones, because I would have never ever guessed in a million years until I started wearing this shade. And I realized, yes, that is what looks good. And I realized, okay, I am definitely warm undertoned. I don't need to stick with only purples just because I have hazel eyes. So Bubba it is. one of my faves, staple, always and forever. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in my crease. Now, this shade I consider a 4 shade, meaning it is pretty light. I can easily build her up pretty, like to where I get enough depth, but it's not a 4-5 shade. When I'm using a 4-5, I gotta be really careful, keeping a really light hand, or it can pull really dark in that area. So this one, I feel like I can easily kind of go into, not have to tap off as much excess. Now, again, this highly depends on your skin tone. So for me, at my skin tone, Bubba is a 4, okay? If you are lighter than me, it might act like a 4-5, like where to, like on you can see it with barely any, and you don't need to use as much, because this is all related to overall skin tone ranges, I guess you could say. 5s are the deepest, 1s are the lightest across our entire range. Okay, so in the crease, make sure when your eyes are open, you can see that color up above the hood. This is what is opening our eyes. Can you see the difference of how that frames out our eyes, gives you depth? When I pick a 1 shade eye look, I just pick a 4. Yes, it's not as fun as a shimmer, but like it does more for the way my eyes look than a shimmer on the lid ever would, because can't see that with my eyes open. Okay, so I take the small end and we're just gonna run that along the lash line. Bubba is I'd say Bubba and Basic are really good shades if you struggle with haloing under your eyes to start with. If you're lighter than me, I'd say try like Chai or Pup, but at my skin tone, I can throw these on with very little blending, and it defines my eyes without me feeling like, oh gosh, I need to go back and blend that. 1 darker with Sedona, and I really have to be careful and make sure it's blended well. So there you go. So far, we've only used the eyeshadow brush, and you can do your entire eye look with just this brush. I can't say that about the rest of the brushes, but if you have mature eyes, you want a brush that's not gonna like pull at your skin, that you can just use the very end of, and that's going to blend. And this is literally the brush we have that's designed to blend. It's incredible. I have to say, with any multiple shade eye look, I can't do my eyes without the brush cleaning tile in between shades. It's the best way to get a clean brush that you can blend with or not muddy up your color. Skip, we did 3 steps so far. So we're gonna assess what we have, pick that universal highlight shade, and then pick a number 4 shade or 4-5 shade. Now, if you're building a palette, like I said, you can definitely pick 1 warm, 1 cool. And once you kind of discover what looks best on you, what you love the most, you can build out from those colors, give yourself a little bit more versatility, step out of your comfort zone a little bit. But now we're going to step 4. Yes, 4, which is we're gonna choose a number 5 shade. And we're gonna do this next because, again, it's easy. So far we have 2 neutrals, okay? And we can easily add anything to that eye look. And guess what? It's gonna go together. So we don't have to overthink that, okay? The next 2 shades, you can pick anything. Obviously, the more neutrals you have in your compact, the more versatile it'll be, just because all neutrals go together and then other shades go with neutrals. But I want you to kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit. If you wanna try a pop of color, I find this is the easiest shade to do it with, believe it or not. When you ask me how I would use these colors, the bold ones, guess what I'd say? I'd use it as number 5. I'd use it as a liner because it always works. Even if it's a lighter color, like you can totally rock a bold liner. It's a look, right? So it might not be the most natural look, but it's a look. So number 5, when you get to that point, I want you to ask yourself, what are you gonna use it for? Because there's a lot of different ways you can use a number 5 color. So our number 5 shades are typically our deep dark shades, okay? So they could be deep reds, deep neutrals. I mean, I always keep at least 4 or 5 in my palette. So how are you gonna use it? Here's the ways you can use it. You can use it as a liner, like I just said. Really easy. You can use it as more defined line. You can use it as a smudgy line. You can use it to add a bold pop of color line. It's very simple. Use it with any eye look. You can use it as an outer corner. So when I say outer corner, I mean this magic triangle you always hear about. It's going to kind of add a lot more depth to your eye looks. It's something that when I'm doing a nighttime look, I always add that outer corner. It finishes off the look and always gives me more drama. You can use it as both. You can put it as liner and then pop it in the outer corner very easily. Or you can just use one or the other, no liner, just do an outer corner. And last but not least, a brow color. Now, not everyone's brows are dark enough for a 5. It might be a 4 or a 4-5 shade. I'll drop in a graphic of different brow options. You can always ask me or send me a picture. I'll tell you what I recommend you starting with, and you can go based on that chart if you can see how dark you like your brows, okay? Brows are very personal. They do a lot to frame our faces, but it's very easy to go like too warm with brows, which isn't a good look unless you're a redhead, or too green even, I mean, most of the time it's safe to go cooler. You don't wanna go warmer. Okay, so if that is the case, it's pretty easy. You can pick a brow color and use that as your 5 shade. Some people, it could be a 4 shade. Usually that's on the cool side. So I like it for me, personally. I would pick, gosh, I barely have any left, Trust. So this is a cool undertone brown, and that would work really well as a liner, work really well as an outer corner, especially because I chose a warmer brown in my crease. Sometimes I think it will give you more depth if you use it as an outer corner if it's opposite in tone from what you chose in your crease. Now, it's not like a rule or anything like that, but I find if I'm using both a warm shade and a warm shade, I gotta be careful and make sure there's enough depth between the two, enough of a contrast that I can really see a difference between those colors, or guess what? They're all gonna blur into one, right? So you guys know probably by now my rule of thumb, and we'll get to it more in the next step, but choosing contrasting undertones is always a no-fail way to make sure you can see the difference between 2 colors on your eye. If you have a lot of issues with shades looking like one all over color, that's the easiest way to fix it. So I used Trust. Where is Oak? This was Oak and this was Basic. I find most people, if they're blonde, they can use Basic. You want it a little bit darker, you can use Oak. And if you have as darker hair as me, you can go up to Trust. And if you stay in that, unless again, you have like auburn hair, it's a pretty much a no fail, okay? So those are great brow colors that can double as eye colors, kind of those staple cool shades you already have in your palette. I like to think of that when I'm building a palette for somebody. Do you have a brow color? Because then you can use it for eyeshadow as well. Obviously, if it's darker enough like me, I can use Oak and Trust as my liner. Basic's too light, but I just use that in the crease instead. For me and this look, I'm gonna pick something that I can do both with. Outer corner and liner. And it's totally just a personal preference thing at this point. Granted, I do have warmth on the hood, so I would probably go with something slightly cooler so it creates more depth, more balance to my overall look. Now, sometimes I don't choose this until after the next shade, but I find it if you're choosing staples, it's easier to pick this one first, because when you get to the next one, there's a lot of options. It can be overwhelming. So have those nice staples, okay? I always keep a warm brown and let's see, a cool brown, and then even a charcoal color. Gosh, I have a lot of 5 shades in here. So I've got Trust, which is a cool dark brown. I've got Cocoa, which is a warm dark brown. This is Coal, which is a dark charcoal, which is even cooler and darker than Trust. I like this as a liner when I want more depth than this. This is like a natural liner for me, and this is more depth. And then I even have Revival, which you guys have seen me use 100,000 times because it is my favorite. This is the one that's more of a plum undertone. So let's see if I can swatch it over here. Okay, so it's got more purple in it, okay? So that would be, and it's probably why I use that color so much, because I typically wear warm shades in my crease. This was cool. This is cool, dark, gives me a lot of depth. No worries, I'm not gonna use it today, guys. I'm gonna try something different. Gotta get it out of my comfort zone sometimes. Sometimes I'm forced to. So let's go to deep dark shades. Again, like I said, if you've ever wanted to experiment with a dark green or dark blue, Denim is really beautiful in the outside corner, or as a liner, Ivy League as well. I think I've used almost all of these as a liner, except for this one. Atlantic's a little bit too light. They all work really well. Question, should we use a color or a neutral? So here's where I ask myself, okay, if I pick a neutral, I'll be able to use more of a color on my lid, because then it'll be all neutrals. If I pick a color, depends on what the color is, it'll affect my choice for the lid. So I'm gonna tentatively pick, and this is why I like having so many options, Fin, okay? It is neutral. It's got a little bit of undertone to it, I feel like. Kind of that olivey green undertone, okay? So we got Fin, or what about Kin? I haven't used Kin in a while. Kin, which is more color, more of a deep purple shimmer. So both of these are shimmery, and I get questioned all the time about, well, I thought you're not supposed to use like shimmer in certain places. When a shimmer is this dark, you can experiment. Literally, like, take a light shimmer on the back of your hand and look at the texture of your skin versus a dark shimmer, okay? Shimmer is all about light reflection, okay? The lighter the color, it reflects more light, meaning you're gonna be able to see more skin texture. The darker the color is gonna absorb more light. And guess what? When you got really dark shimmers like this, it absorbs light and you're not gonna see as much texture in these areas. And so you can use shimmers there. I notice that I don't notice that area as much when I use a deeper color in the outer corner, because that is an area where I have a lot of texture. So the shimmer won't affect it. So I totally use shimmers as long as they're deep and dark, which is 5s only, okay? I would never suggest putting a 2 to 3 in the outer corner. Defeats the purpose of adding depth. Okay, so we're gonna come back to that. And we're gonna go ahead and pick our lid shade, because for one, I never would apply an outer corner before the lid, because I want that lid shade on first so then I can blend into it. So my order isn't the best order of application. It's just maybe will help you get those staple shades first. Step 5, we're finally on to the fun part, choosing those fun number 2 or 3 shimmers. So 2 just means it's a lighter shimmer, darker than those 1 shades that we already talked about. 3s are just a mid-tone shimmer. So They might be around the same tone as those number 4s that go in your crease, but they're shimmers and not mattes. So we gotta keep those on the lid, okay? We wanna keep them where we don't have as much texture. Now granted, I have mature eyes, I have texture there, but I notice as long as I just keep them on my lid and out of the crease, out of this area, keep them away from the bottom lash line, keep them out of the outer corner, and just put them right there, guess what? What they do is they open up the eye, they catch the light, and they don't make me look older. It's just all in what you're pairing them with, how you're using them. Some shades are harder than others, and not so much that like, because of what they look like on the eye once they're on, it's more of like an application issue. Some of our shades are more foiled and they lead to more fallout, which, where does fallout go? Under the eye, and it will age you like that. And so some of the shades I typically avoid wearing is because of how they're applied. But for the most part, a typical shimmer with Seint is gonna be pretty finely milled. I get no fallout with those. I can put them exactly where I want them and be good to go. So the vast majority of the other shades are gonna be 2 to 3s. And 2 to 3s don't have to be shimmery. All of these like are also matte. Some of these are mattes and in that category. So if you were like, nope, no shimmers, none, you would just pick a darker color than what you used as the highlight, lighter than what you choose for the crease. And what that's gonna do is create that contour of the eye. If you try to put a darker shade here, it is a look, but it is not going to catch the light, make your eyes look bigger and open up your eye, especially if you have hooded eyes. You wanna keep your lid lighter than your hood, okay? We want that hood to go back and we want the lid to come forward and give us that open eye effect. Now, how do we choose? I find there's just three reasons. You can go based on color family. So I did a whole video swatching every eyeshadow shade based on color family. If you have a preference, say you just love purples on you, those purple undertoned color family, those are what you're gonna gravitate towards. Those are the ones you're gonna rock. Okay, that is a color family preference. You're gonna stick with those. Eye color, like I said before, if you really want your eye shade to pop, you're gonna go opposite that color wheel and you're gonna turn to those. And then others are just like, what are you drawn to? When you open this palette, what's the first color that draws you in? What are you attracted to? Like, what is fun for you to apply? Sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna open my compact and pick a color that I feel like wearing that day. And then I'm gonna build an eye look around it. And so if you have a color that you love, like you're like, oh, that color's gorgeous, I'm gonna pick that and then I'm gonna be able to be like, okay, now what can I wear with it? How can I keep the rest of them neutral so that is the star of the show? And then if you have those staples in your compact, you can easily just be like, I'm just gonna keep it real nice and simple and pop that color on the lid and you got it. So my only advice when choosing this color is if you've already applied your 4 shade like I have, you don't necessarily wanna find something too similar in depth and tone. And that's always my rule because I feel like the #1 question I get asked is, my colors are just mudding up together. They all look like one color. How I'm not seeing any difference between all these colors I put on my eye. And I feel like it's the most apparent when you're doing a 2-color look and that's all you have is a shimmer and a matte and it all looks like one color. It's because you chose 2 colors too similar. So when you're choosing something, make sure it doesn't look too similar. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've told people not to use Bend and Snap next to Lullaby. You might think they look different enough, but I get this all the time. People are like, well, they're in the same color family, they'll complement each other. But by the time they're on the eye and blended, where there's no harsh lines, you're not gonna see much of a distinction at all. It's just gonna look purple. You want there to be a contrast between the colors. That is like what's going to give the look you're after. So when you're choosing a color, you don't have to go dramatic. Like I wouldn't go, okay, this color's really warm. I'm gonna put it next to a really cool shade. Some people can pull that off. Sometimes it looks too off. Like you don't have to go extreme, coolest shade with the warmest shade, okay? Again, this is why I always have a color in there to fix if needed, because if you put that on the eye and it looks too extreme, you can easily add another color to help with blend. If you tend to get the one color all over look, try to look for a little bit more contrast and just, sometimes that's depth. Sometimes you just have to take one of those colors and apply more of it to build up and give a darker color in one area as opposed to the other. Sometimes it's application. Like I could make the Lullaby Bend and Snap work if I applied Bend and Snap really lightly and Lullaby dark enough. It would be in the same color family, but it would give enough distinction if I was to make one way darker than the other. And so sometimes it's just a tweak, okay? But like if you're just picking colors that you can easily mix and match for 2-shade looks, it's really easy if you just have some cool shimmers, some warm shimmers, a cool matte and a warm matte, and you're gonna have so many endless combinations that you could put together and try. So just remember contrast. So I'm always asked to wear this color, and I'll be honest, I never wear it. I find it a little bit more difficult to wear because it is one of the most deceiving colors online. It looks nothing like this online. This is Moscow. So I think, did I swatch it? No, I think I just put it on my finger. Moscow is very much like, oh, it's a beautiful shade. It's more of like that orangey red, which scares people. Some people are like scared of red on the eyes. Some people are scared of orange on the eyes. It's beautiful for fall. It's all in just how you wear it, okay? So I feel like I can get enough contrast between this and Bubba if I apply this lightly. Now, if I apply this too heavily, it's gonna be really pigmented. So I'm just gonna keep with this brush. I'm not gonna pick up the Multitasker and get more pigment or even the smudge brush. I'm gonna stick with this brush and I'm just gonna do a wash over the lid for color and slowly build until it's at the level I want. You see that? Okay, and Bubba is like about as light as I could possibly go in the crease with this color. It would probably look better with Sedona, to be honest, a little bit more depth, but I can just go back and add a little bit more depth with Bubba as well. Like I said, adjust. It's all in application sometimes. See, I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I can't remember the last time I wore this color, but it is a fall tone indeed. So I'm just gonna slowly build till I can definitely see that pigment. Now, before I go in with more Bubba, I'm gonna go in with that outer corner color. Now, since I used this orangey red, I'm gonna nix the purple. And this is my color for sure. Hopefully you guys can see it on camera. This is my color. So I'm gonna go in with this to add depth, and it's gonna add some of those, oh, this one I feel like is both cool and warm. So I feel like this is a good option to kind of tie everything together. Now, I am gonna switch my brush. Anytime I go in to an outer corner, I'm going to use the smudge brush because it makes my life about 10 times easier. So this is Fen. We're gonna just tap, tap, and then we're gonna build up. Now, one of my tricks, if you do get this all over look and you were gonna add a number 5 shade in the outer corner anyway, is picking a color. That way you can go into the crease and maybe adding a little bit more depth in between the two. So that way they're not gonna look like they're running together. because all you have to do is add that. And if it's opposite tone, it's way easier. So if this was straight up cool, it would be really easy because so far I just had warm and warm. Does that make sense? Not to mention, a cool shade in the outer corner is very easy because it's natural to look like you have the most shadow there, and shadows are cool undertoned, right? Okay, I know I'm gonna need a little bit more Bubba, I can already tell. Now I'm gonna go into this side. Okay, before I adjust, I'm gonna finish with that shade and line. Now, here comes the kicker, depending on the type of line you want. I always use either the line brush, if you want the most definition. This is a very precise line. If you're gonna be using our Black Friday eyeliner, I recommend this. Putting that down is gonna add the most depth with that black. And then this will just kind of set it. Or you can use the Multitasker, and I use this when I want a more smudgy, more lived in, more daily look. It totally just depends. I mean, you can use either side of this brush to create a line, and then I always will set a cream or any other eyeliner I use with a powder for more longevity so it doesn't transfer all the things. So I'm just debating, I think I do want to use a little bit of Black Friday. Haven't used it in a while. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the line brush and tap in, and then I use it like a stamp. I don't really pull in order to get the most color payoff. Just kind of stamp it along the lash line. Okay. Doesn't really take much to add that depth. If you're wanting your lash line to look thicker, that's what I recommend. Now I'm gonna take the side of the Multitasker and just, again, stamp it on that line. Before I ever finish an eye look, I always assess, because I feel like as you're adding colors and building out your look, you can go back and be like, well, I lost a color there. And I feel like I kind of lost a little bit of the warmth when I added that. And so I'm gonna do kind of just a light hand of some of those colors to build them back up. I do this often, so I'm just going to shimmy, add a little bit more color on the lid. Especially because I know it's harder to see on camera than in real life. So if I can't see it as much as I was hoping to in real life, I know you guys won't be able to see it. Okay, we're getting off excess color, and I'm going back in with Bubba because I feel like I've lost some warmth here. It also kind of helps blend this up here. So I always tend to go back in with my 4-5 shade. 4-5 shade, and add and make sure it's lifted high enough on the eye that we can see it. And usually that shade's our best to kind of blur any harsh lines. Okay, again, I'm gonna take a little bit more under the lower lashes. And then last but not least, I always take whatever I lined my eyes with into the inner or outer corner of the lower lashes as well. Okay, friends, there's the finished eye look. Whew, we did a lot of swatches. I hope that was helpful. I feel like once you get those staples in each of those categories, and it doesn't mean it has to be a lot, one number one shade, maybe a couple of 4s that you can then build onto, a couple of 5s, and then some fun shimmers to kind of mix and match. Our goal is 8. I feel like if you guys saw my like little chart here, our goal is 8. If you had 8, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna type this up. Our goal is 8, and if you can have 8, that is what I travel with. So when I travel, I'm always thinking the most versatile, the most number of looks, how can I pair things together? It is always devised of some really great staple warm and cool shades, and then some of my favorite fall, like some of my favorite shimmers in that 2 to 3 category that can easily mix and match with both. It's not super complicated, but it takes a little bit of thinking, especially if you're like me and you love eyeshadow and you love all the shades and you want to be able to bring 30, but you know you can't. I'm gonna show you guys an example palette of how you can kind of put together 8 shades of warm, cool, neutral that is really versatile, all right? So step by step, I hope that was helpful, and hopefully this with your custom eyeshadow color match will be just what you need to get started with Seint eyeshadows. They are the best. I love customizing. I travel compact anytime I go anywhere and just picking the ones I want, dropping them in, not having to worry about all these different containers, just sticking them in my palette. It is such a game changer. I hope that was helpful. If you're needing help with your own eyeshadow match, I will drop the link down in the caption below the video, as well as all of the ones I shared. As always, if you have ever seen anything in any of my YouTube videos, as far as graphics, anything like that, you can always email me. It's just sarah@thecontouredchemist.com. I can send you whatever you're looking for. It's impossible for me to like put them in the comments, or I would. You can't upload pictures. So if you ever see anything and you want access to it, you want it for your own records, I will always send my clients anything they need that can help them with their makeup. I'm here to make your life easier and enjoy the process as well. As always, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.